we just touched on the possibility of a third world war, but as this is laid out before me, it seems like there really isn't any way for NATO to win, for the United States to win in this situation with Taiwan. And because it seems like there are just all these roadblocks to military success for the United States and NATO, it seems like this, to me, a World War III scenario is being diffused, or am I off base?
No, I think in Europe you're on base. And here's the thing. Russia, before they initiated their special military operation, their invasion of Ukraine, um, had spent a lot of time trying to convince NATO that there was a better way to do this. And all NATO had to do is respect Russia's legitimate national security interests. Russia even put this in writing. They gave NATO and the United States draft treaties on December 17th of 2021, which we, of course, ignored. But the key concept behind these draft treaties was a new European security framework. That's what Russia was talking about. We need to have a new European security framework that, while it doesn't demand the dissolution of NATO, it does require NATO to pull back NATO-only infrastructure back to 1997 geopolitical boundaries. That means that there can't be missile defense plants in Poland and Romania, that there can't be NATO bases in the Baltics, et cetera. All this stuff has to be pulled back. NATO said no. I think when Russia defeats Ukraine with the level of decisiveness that it will, and NATO is exposed as the paper tiger that it is, NATO is going to have some hard choices, especially in the aftermath of what I believe is going to be a very difficult economic season coming up. To further bankrupt itself, and they may lose a lot of nations who say we can't afford this military buildup that Stoltenberg wants, to come up with this 300,000 man rapid force, or to find a way to peacefully coexist with Russia in a manner that respects its legitimate national security interests by coming up with a new European security framework. And it's doable. It's not impossible. I mean, first of all, there's this treaty that we used to have called the Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty, CFE. And the idea was that NATO and the Warsaw Pact, now that we were involved in good relations, had built up all this military power. And just the mere fact that this military power existed was a security threat to Europe. So conventional forces in Europe sought to draw down military capability and pull back military capability, creating sort of a buffer zone where people wouldn't be threatened. Now, that treaty came to an end because, of course, the United States and NATO can never live up in good faith to any arms control agreement. And when we enlarged NATO to include the Baltics, we said, well, because the Baltics weren't part of the original CFE negotiations, their military forces can't be counted in. So basically, NATO got a freebie to get all the get all the military strength of the Baltics, but Russia doesn't get to offset it with increased numbers on its part. And Russia said, "The hell with that," and they unplugged. But we could breathe life back into the Conventional Forces in Europe Treaty. That's something that I think Europe might buy into. Instead of spending billions to build up 300,000 man rapid response force, why not engage in meaningful disarmament with Russia, conventional disarmament, to reduce numbers, pull them back, and create a buffer that could include Finland and Sweden. I mean, that's the beauty of the Russian position. Russia has said, if you want to join NATO, join NATO. We don't care. Just don't allow NATO to join you, meaning you can't use your soil to host. And a conventional forces in Europe type arrangement would allow that to happen. Finland and Sweden can be part of NATO. Go ahead, eat your heart out. We don't care. Just pull the NATO infrastructure back to 1997 lines, and Russia would do the same. Instead of having all their forces built up in the front, they'd pull them back to the central military district. And then both sides would seek to disarm, to reduce the threshold. So you don't have tens of thousands of tanks ready to go to war. Imagine that. And then you do the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty. Breathe life back into that. Get rid of these nuclear missiles. man, now Europe's looked like a pretty good place to live. I could live in Europe like that. So there's a possibility. It can only come from a position of Russian strength, though, as we talked about when we talked about disarmament. Um, the only way disarmament is going to work between the West and Russia is for the West to treat Russia as an equal, as a peer, to respect them, so that when you enter into an agreement, it's reciprocal, real reciprocity. It's not a one-way deal that only the United States benefits from. And Russia, by winning this conflict in Europe against Ukraine so decisively, will have earned that respect. And so I believe there is a window of opportunity for this European security framework to be reworked in a fashion that's beneficial to all. And what it also does is it begins to de-emphasize NATO as an institution. There's no reason for NATO to exist, but Russia's not insisting on its dissolution. Russia just doesn't want to have 300,000 NATO troops right up on its borders.
In their backyard.
Yeah, and so there's a way to do this, and then by de-emphasizing it, I think you'll see ideas such as that being espoused by Macron about a European security force, not NATO, but a European security force that takes into account European security. What the hell is Canada and the United States doing getting involved in European security?
This is none of our business. Why are we doing this?
No sense whatsoever. And if we're going to be honest, NATO is nothing more than an extension of American national security policy to begin with. NATO only exists to benefit America. So if Europe could wake up to the fact that NATO is a suicide pact, not a defensive pact, that the best thing Europe could do is have a European security framework independent of the United States that dealt responsibly with Russia, that encouraged peaceful coexistence. It may never be in our lifetime that Russia and Europe can ever again view each other as partners. Europe betrayed that. Russia will never trust Europe, at least not this current generation of Russians. That doesn't mean that the future can't bring about that kind of change. Remember, it took us a long time from 1945 to 1991 to bring the Cold War to an end. So who knows what the future will hold, but man, it would be a better future if both sides weren't gearing up for war and instead down gearing for peace. That would be a nice world to live
Yeah.
All that.
Wow.
All that. 100%.